Okay, as folks continue to file in, I just want to mention we've got the safe harbor statement up on screen. While we don't intend on making any forward or future leaning statements today, I just want to put this up here just in case, in the event during our Q&A or at any point, maybe we say something related to futures or something that we think might happen. Please don't make any purchasing decisions based on that information. Those of us on the call here, we like to deal with the here and now, what's available today. That being said, if we do say something forward leaning, I just want to stress that any future things like that are subject to change. So please, no purchasing decisions based on information like that. Welcome. My name is Jeff Bartels, and today, in today's session, we're going to be looking at how we could take advantage of the docs entitlement that's included with the AEC collection. A little bit about myself. I have been working in the civil infrastructure industry for a long time. And for a good portion of that time, I was the CAD manager at a civil engineering and consulting firm in Illinois, which is where I'm from. I have also been teaching Autodesk applications for a long time. And since coming to Autodesk, I contribute to a blog called Civil Immersion, and I've got the URL listed there on screen. The Civil Immersion blog is it's a project that some of the other technical specialists and I put together for the purpose of creating how-to videos to help folks make the most of their Autodesk investment. I'm sure you'll agree that there's a bunch of tools available in the AEC collection. And over the past couple of years, we have created hundreds of 6 to 8 minute tutorial videos showing you workflows that you can leverage to make use of those tools. And in fact, today's session is really an extension of that. We're going to be looking how we can use docs, which is now included with the collection. If you've never been to the blog, by all means, stop by. There's some great information available there. As far as our conversation today, we're going to be talking about docs. We'll start out with a quick overview of Autodesk's cloud platform in the event you're brand new to the platform. And then we'll talk about some workflows that are made possible using docs. We'll be dividing those up into several categories: digital design review. We'll be talking about anytime, anywhere access. This is going to be using a mobile app. We'll look at how we can use docs to have a single resource for file exchange. And we'll also look at some of the collaboration options available using docs. I've got questions listed at the end. However, we don't have to wait till the end to address questions. Jerry Bartels, Alan Gilbert, and Angel Espinosa are with me today. They're hanging out in the background, and they will be answering questions as they come in. If you have a question during the session, by all means, please put that in the Q&A pane. That is the most efficient way for them to find and respond to questions. And due to the amount of content that we have today, we should have plenty of time for some live Q&A at the end. Our goal for today's session is to give you some exposure to Autodesk Docs. If you've never explored it before, I just want to show you this is something that you have access to. We're going to talk about some ways that you can take advantage of it. We won't be looking at everything that it can do today. We could spend a whole day talking about docs. We're just going to be reviewing a subset of its capabilities. And along the way, I will be stressing the business benefits of the workflows that we show. And then always as a goal, we want to address any questions that you may have. So let's jump right in. We're going to talk about a quick overview. We're going to look at Autodesk's cloud platform. Now, when it comes to Autodesk's cloud platform, there are actually two platforms to choose from. There's the BIM 360 platform. BIM 360 is Autodesk's flagship cloud platform. It was introduced in 2016. There is also a brand new platform called Autodesk Construction Cloud, which was introduced just last year. The Construction Cloud platform was built from the ground up using technology Autodesk recently acquired. Now, both platforms are organized into modules. We'll talk about the modules here in a second. Both platforms support similar workflows, and they have a similar look and feel. The best part is that the docs entitlement included with the AEC collection allows you to access both platforms. So you can access either. Having said that, the workflows demonstrated today will be done using the BIM 360 platform. I chose BIM 360 because we have a much higher percentage of users who have standardized on this platform. And if you're just getting into Autodesk's cloud, you're more likely to encounter users who are collaborating using BIM 360. Once again, regardless of the platform you use, the workflows will be similar between them. Let's talk for a second about the modules. The cloud platform is divided up into modules. The primary module is this one, the document management module, otherwise known as Docs. Docs represents the foundation of the cloud platform. This is where you create your projects. This is where you build out your directory structure. This is where you upload files. This is where you invite members. This is where you assign permissions. This is where you create a review process and transmittals, things like that. It's the foundation on which the other modules are connected. Now, from a high level, we could talk about some of the other modules here. The other modules are designed to have functionality that is applicable to different phases of a project life cycle. As an example, during the design phase, you may use the design collaboration module. Design collaboration allows you to host your CAD model in the cloud. This is where you can put your Revit model in the cloud and have other stakeholders outside your firewall collaborating with you. You can host your Civil 3D model in the cloud. You can host your Plant 3D model in the cloud. That's what that module allows. There's another module for model coordination. This module is used to reference several disparate CAD models together into a centralized BIM model. From there, you can view the properties of the various models. You can do automated clash detection. You can also do constructability reviews. One more module we'll touch on is the field coordination module. This module is used to digitize the field inspection process. No more clipboards and paper. All of our checklists and things like that are digital now. We can use this module to assign checklists to folks, pick due dates. We can use those checklists to perform QA/QC, safety checks, punch lists, construction observation, things like that. We can also generate reports from that information. One more thing I want to touch on is Autodesk Forge. You may have heard of Forge before. Forge represents the APIs on which the cloud platform was built. So Forge is used to create customizations. If you've ever worked on an Autodesk application before and thought, man, I wish this had this particular feature, or I wish I could connect this Autodesk application to another tool that I use, that's what Forge is for. This is how you can build integrations between the cloud platform and other applications. So this module approach that we just talked about is going to be applicable to both of the platforms. So today we're going to be talking about Docs. This is what is included with the AEC collection. So let's look at how we can take advantage of it. First of all, we can use Docs for digital design review. Docs gives us the ability to open several different types of design files through a web browser. You can see some of the extensions listed here: PDF, DWG, NWD, that's a Navisworks file, Revit. We can open as many as 40 different industry standard design files through the Docs environment. When we open those files, we have the ability to create red line markups, much like we could back in the day when we used pencil and paper, although this could be a totally paperless markup environment. We can also direct work to be done. We can assign work to individuals and pick due dates by creating things called issues. Those issues that we create can be tracked to completion. I know when I worked in industry, it wasn't uncommon to hear an engineer say, hey, I've marked this particular thing up 3 times and for some reason it's not getting done. We don't have to worry about that with Docs because the work that we assign to people is trackable. It's kind of a ball and court situation where it goes back and forth until it's resolved. So no important items go untouched. Nothing falls through the cracks. Using Docs, we can retain every version of every design file or every file that's stored within the cloud, and we can compare those versions one against another to make sure the project is evolving based on the direction that we're giving. Finally, with Docs, we can have an audit trail. This is a running history of every transaction that occurs during that project. One of the things we always said in industry was the last phase of every project is the litigation phase. And if you've ever had a project under litigation, many times it involves having to dig through banker boxes of paper documents and red lines to try and establish the history of the project, who made what decision and when. With Docs, we don't have to worry about that. The entire history, every transaction is available as a digital record from the point of inception of that project to the point of completion. So let's take a look at some of the workflows. First of all, when it comes to Docs, there is no installation required. So if you've ever worked with an Autodesk application before, there's no deployments. no implementations or hot fixes or service packs or anything like that. Everything is handled on Autodesk's side. It is a service that you connect to through a web browser. Then the fact that you're essentially running a website means it's got a very low learning curve, very easy to get in and start using Docs. So we can see the environment on screen. In Docs, when I get into the environment, I can use this menu at the top of the screen to select my account, and then I can select my desired project from the list. Note that there's a search area at the top. We can also use that to find projects. When you access a project, we'll find the directory structure on the left side of the screen. If you select a folder, you'll see the contents of that folder over to the right. In this case, I've got a bunch of PDFs representing plan sheets. These files that we see here are like hyperlinks. If you click on it, it will open within the Docs environment. I can then pan and zoom and review my files. In the event you see something that needs to be addressed, in this case, I've got some laterals that appear to have not be displaying on screen. There's a full collection of markup tools here. I can create lines and bubbles and text. I can change the color or the pen weight. I can apply fills to these. So we've got a bunch of tools to create traditional red line markups. When you create markups, they can be saved in two ways: private, meaning they're only viewable by the creator, or published, meaning they're viewable by anybody that reviews the sheet. The markups that we create are stored as metadata with the files, and they're stored forever as part of that project history. Now, another way we can assign work to people is using an issue. An issue is a lot like a push pin. I can simply stick a push pin in the file, and I can fill out this issue card. I can give it a title. I can pick who the person is that I want to assign this work to. I can pick a due date, description. I can fill out as much or as little of this issue card as I want. And when I'm finished, I'll click create, and that will instantly send an email to the affected person, letting them know that the work needs to be done. Here in the Docs interface, if we drag this over, you can see that the markups and the issues are stored as metadata with the files. Note that each project also has a dedicated issues area. This is where you can see all the issues associated with the project. And there's a filter that you can apply to it. Show me all the issues based on status or who they're assigned to or when they're due. Each project also includes a dashboard or a home screen that gives us a nice overall view of the project. This can be customized to the individual if you want to. Notice that in this dashboard, we can see the issues down here in the lower left corner. So we've seen how Docs can hold files and how they can be used to, assign issues to people. Let's look at it from the receiver's point of view. I assigned an issue to Jerry. Let's look at it from his perspective. When he gets the email saying an issue has been assigned to him, he can click the hyperlink, which will take him to the Docs environment. He can go to the home screen, and in the lower left corner, he can see the issues that are specific to him. Since we did the first issue, you can see there's actually two of them here now. So the work in the lower left corner is kind of like the things that are on his plate for today, we'll say. If he clicks to open an issue, it will bring up the basic information, showing him just some of the details. There's also a hyperlink there where he can open up the full issue card and see all the information that I provided to him. Note there's an attachments area. I can have photos and documents attached to this. There's also an activity list where you can see the full history of all the interaction going back and forth. The issue includes a hyperlink that will take you right to the push pin in the file where it was created, and you could see that issue card in context with the push pin. Now, in this case, I gave him the direction to add a detail to this sheet. Let's assume that he did that. We'll assume that he opened the CAD file and he inserted the detail that I requested, printed and uploaded a new PDF. At this point, he could respond to the issue. To respond, he can come down to the response area and he can enter a note for me. I'm the one that assigned it to him. He can then come up and change the issue status. Notice how the color changes. You can also see it's assigned back to me now since I'm the creator. Having that color change is nice. It's a nice visual cue. Just at a glance, you can tell the status of the issues. So Jerry made the change. Now, ball's back in my court. I get an email telling me that that particular item was taken care of. Let's look at it from my perspective. If I'm in Docs, here in the environment, we'll find a column called version. You can see that currently that soil erosion plan has got a V2. It means there's two versions now. A newer version has been uploaded. If I click the hyperlink, it will always open the latest version. This is the latest version. It's the most current sheet from this plan set. I can see the detail Jerry added. I can also click that issue push pin and I can read his response. And then I can do a comparison. There is a compare feature where I can compare one version to another. Now, when I go into the compare feature, it acts a lot like a light table. It lays one version of the latest version of this PDF on top of the previous version. And you can see right here that anything that is unique to the new version is red. Anything unique to the prior version is blue. So very easy to see that Jerry added a detail to this sheet. Now, there's a couple of ways we can compare files. We can do it via this overlay method, or there's a side-by-side method where we can drag it back and forth. And this works well if we have more granular changes like this text. When I'm finished reviewing, I can close the comparison, and then I can change the status of the issue. I can close it if it's good, or I can reopen it. This is where we can go back and forth. Hey, the change you made isn't good enough. We've got to take and go through this process again. Notice that when I change that to closed, if we go back to the dedicated issues area, we'll see the closed issues don't display in the list. So you don't have to worry about the list being cluttered with things that have already been handled. There happens to be a filter applied to that automatically, but we can always turn that filter off if you did want to see those closed issues. Let's talk about one more thing, that audit history, that full digital record of every transaction that happens on a project. Here I'm in Docs, and if I wanted to see the history of a project, this is the type of thing that a project manager would do, or a project admin. If I go to the project admin area, we'll find an activity list. Here I can see every transaction that's happened on this project, not only today, but if I go to older, we can drag up and down and we can see every person who's been involved with this file, whether they've uploaded, downloaded, viewed a file, accessed a record, created a directory. We've got a full history here. Not only do we have, everybody and all the transactions, but it's also this blue text represents hyperlinks. So it's a fully cross-referenced list. So I could click and I can open up the same file that I saw that Alan reviewed on August 19th. So we have a phenomenal history of our project. If the time comes where we have to prove who made what decision and when, all of that is stored in the cloud. One more thing, if I go back into the activity area, we can export this history. If I click the export button, I can choose my desired date range, and I can export that as a comma delimited file that I can then bring up in Excel, and I can create pivot tables or reports on that if I want to, once again, for archival or analysis purposes for the project. Wonderful tool. So we can do all of that just with the docs that's included with the AEC collection. Let's look at a few more things. With Docs, we have anytime, anywhere access to our project data. And this is through a mobile device. That could be a smartphone or tablet, iOS or Android. With Docs, we always have access to a current plan set. I've worked with engineers before that have rolls of plans that they carry around in their truck. And one thing we know about paper plans, they're only as accurate as the day they were printed. I'm sure each of us on this call has a story they can tell about folks that we're working from, or even worse, maybe building off of an old set of plans. If you're using Docs, there is only one set of plans, and that's the current set of plans, because those are the plans that are stored in Docs. Not only can you access a current set of plans for any project that you happen to be visiting in the field, you have access to a current set of plans for every project for which you're associated with. So no need to carry around the paper plans anymore. Not only can you open and review plan sheets, you can also create markups or assign issues, much like you can through the web browser. You can leverage some of the functionality of your mobile device. So I can attach photos to my issues if I want to, or supporting documentation if I want to provide direction to folks when I'm in the field. Everything that we do on the mobile device, the issues are the same, the ones that we create on the web browser, those are trackable to completion as well. It's the same type of issue. The items, the transactions that occur in the field are also subject to that audit trail. They will also appear in that list. So we'll have a history of everything that happened, whether it was in the office or out at the job site. And then one more thing, having access to the mobile device or being able to leverage our stuff in the field, we can open a supplemental model. We'll look at that here in a second. So we'll talk about a workflow here. We'll assume that we're an engineer and we're out at a project, and I can access the mobile app by bringing that up here on my tablet. And then I will select my desired project. Once again, we have access to current plans for every project. I'm going to open up this project PR9733, and I can see my plan sheets. I'm going to tap to open a soil erosion and sediment control plan. I can then use typical gestures to pan and zoom on this and review it on my mobile device. If I want to take a measurement, this is a PDF file. If you want to measure a PDF, all you have to do is calibrate the sheet. All I have to do is pick 2 points where I have a known distance. And I have that here with my graphic scale. I can then select my desired units, and now I can take measurements just like we could in the old days where we'd lay the paper on the hood of the truck and use our scale. I can take measurements just point to point. In this example, I can see the hammerhead here is approximately 116 feet long. Not only can I measure point to point, I can also measure angles, and I can measure areas. On screen, we have a concrete washout area. If I wanted the square footage of that, I could simply launch the area option and just tap and work my way around the shape to get the square footage. Another thing, if we're out in the field, sometimes we have to assign work to others. Maybe things need to be addressed. For instance, maybe the sediment control around the inlet here wasn't installed, and as a result, a flared end section is getting plugged up. I can create issues using the mobile device as well. I just tapped to place that push pin. Now I'm filling out the issue card, and I'm using the voice to text feature on the mobile device. So I could be wearing gloves, or I could be carrying equipment, and I could fill this out in the field just by using that voice to text on my device. I can then assign this work to somebody, and then I could pick a due date when it's got to be addressed. I can also leverage the camera on my device. I can take a picture and show the issue that's going on. I can also grab pictures from my gallery if I want to. And when I'm finished, I can tap the create button, and it will fire off an email right there letting that affected person know that that work needs to be done. Now, sometimes when we're in the field, we may not always have access to internet or Wi-Fi. Sometimes the Wi-Fi may be spotty. Sometimes we may not have it at all. Notice in the mobile app, each of the files that exists in the project has a download link. If you're going to a site where you don't have access to internet or where the Wi-Fi may be spotty, you have the ability to download the files that you're going to be using in the field to the local device. You can then create your markups, create your issues, do your transactions in the field, and then when your device connects to Wi-Fi, it will resync that information back to the cloud. So this will work even if you don't have Wi-Fi outside the office. Let's talk about one more thing. In addition to being able to view the plan sheets, we can also open models in the field. Here in the mobile device, I'm going to go to the project files folder, and I'll open a folder here, and we can open a file. This happens to be a utility model that was created in Civil 3D. It represents kind of some complex utilities underground. Now, typically when we're out in the field, we have access to profiles and cross sections, but that doesn't always tell us the full story. We don't have what's going on in between those sections. Here, by being able to open the model, I get a better view of what's going on with respect to my design, both existing and proposed. So what can we do with this? When I open the model, I can double tap on objects. For instance, I'll double tap a structure, and from here I can view the same properties that we have in Civil 3D. Not only can I view the properties of my objects, I can also take measurements if I want to. No calibration necessary. The model is what it is. As an example here, I'm going to take a measurement of the width of the roadway. Since we're working in 3D, I can also take vertical measurements as well. As an example, we'll measure the height of this light pole. Basically, I've just got to tap a point on the light, and I'll tap my surface. If you see the dimensions, you'll recognize they're very similar to Navisworks. Same workflow for doing that. Maybe I might identify an issue that needs to be handled. In this case, it looks like I've got a kind of a conflict there. I can create issues within the models as well. So I can tap to put my push pin in. I can fill out my issue card, click create, and that email is fired off to the affected person, letting them know that the work needs to be done. One more thing I want to mention. Really nice thing about this workflow is you're able to handle these issues in real time. You don't have to write things down and wait till you get back to the office to do all of your correspondence later. You can handle it right in the field when the time comes. So this is possible using the docs entitlement that comes with the AEC collection. Let's look at what else we can do with docs. We can use docs for file exchange. Docs can represent a single solution for all of our file exchange between stakeholders. When I worked in industry, I was in charge of the FTP site. And to be honest, that was quite painful. If we had to send large files to stakeholders, I would have to create a directory for them. I would have to create a login and a password. Many times I'd have to call them on the phone and help them log in so that they could download a file. And it was challenging in the other direction as well. Sometimes if they had to give us a file, then I would have to call and talk to somebody, help them log in and show them where they would put the file. And then I would have to check that directory multiple times during the day, waiting to see when they finally put the file up there for us. Uh, I would have other challenges. Sometimes files would be coming in from a bunch of different sources. They'd be coming in via email or Dropbox or Google Drive, things like that. It was hard to keep track of what the latest version of a file was from various stakeholders. It was also difficult to maintain a record of every file that came in its pristine state. Going back to that history, being able to rebuild the project history later. If you use docs, docs can represent that single file exchange resource. It's easy to control access. We can go through and assign permissions. It's basically we're driving a web page. We'll look at how we can do this here in just a second. Very easy to control, very easy to set up access. You control who can access your data. We can set it up for email notifications. So I can subscribe to a folder, if you will. If the contents of that folder ever changes, it will send me an email and let me know. I don't have to keep checking on a regular basis until files show up. Docs will retain every version of every file that comes in and goes out in its original pristine state. You can't accidentally open and save one of those when they're in docs. So you'll have a full record, full accounting of every file that comes in and goes out. There is also no limit on file size or storage. No file is too big. No storage amount is too much to put in docs. All of that is part of the service. All of the transactions, when it comes to exchanging files, are subject to that audit trail. Everything, all those items will appear in that overall digital history. And then another thing, the fact that Docs has the ability to open more than 40 industry standard design files, you can use this as a tool to allow folks that don't have access to a full version of CAD to be able to open and collaborate and contribute to the collaboration of a project. So it can also be used for that. Let's look at a couple of workflows. Here, we'll say that maybe I want to exchange a file with a landscape architect. So here in the Docs environment, first thing I'm going to do is create a folder. For that, we can create folders here, much like we can on the Windows platform. And in this example, I'm just calling it Landscape Architect. Once the folder's been created, I can then upload files to that folder. Very easy, drag and drop or click the upload button to do that. While that stuff is uploading, I can then assign permissions to this folder. This is how you control access to your project. People only have access to what you assign, what you give them access to. So in this example, for this folder, if I want to add the landscape architect now, I can come up and click the add button, and then I can enter his email address. If he is someone that's already been a part of this project, I can grab him from that project member list. I can then assign his permission level, and this is done graphically. Nice little sliding chart there. I'm going to give him view, download, upload permission. And then one more thing, now that I've given him rights to this folder, I am going to subscribe to the folder. This way, in the event he ever puts anything in this folder for me, this folder or all subfolders, you can see we've got that option as well, it will automatically send me an email, so I don't have to keep checking for when files arrive. I would also encourage him to do the same thing. You subscribe to the folder as well, so the next time I send you something, you'll get an email automatically letting you know about that transaction. One more thing, notice the version column. Versioning applies to everything that goes into the Docs environment. So this is considered V1 of this zip file. If I was to upload a newer version of this later, It would go to V2. It would be maintaining every version. Likewise, it would be maintaining every version of the files that I receive. Now, when I put files in Docs, you saw that I used the web browser and I used this upload button. You may be wondering, do I have to go to the web browser to put files up there or pull files down? And the answer is no. There is a tool called Desktop Connector. This is a free download. Using Desktop Connector, we can create a sync between the cloud and our local machine. Let's look at how this works. This is my desktop. I have loaded Desktop Connector on this machine. And when you load Desktop Connector, it creates a service that runs in the background. If I open my tool tray, you can see there's Desktop Connector right there. Desktop Connector creates that sync between the cloud and my computer. So just to simulate the way this works, I'm going to come over on the left side of the screen. I'm going to log into Docs, and I will select a project. I'll grab this PR9733. And in the project, we'll see a directory structure. We can see the folders that exist in that project. Now, on the right side of the screen, I'm going to go to Windows Explorer. And when you install when you install Desktop Connector, it creates a drive letter, if you will, for lack of a better term. It creates a drive letter called Autodesk Docs. We can use this to take in, this is the area that's synced to the cloud. So if I want to see that same project, I will open up that drive letter, and inside Docs, I can connect to my account. Now I have access to a lot of accounts. I can then select that same PR9733 project. And inside that project, we have the same directory structure on my local machine as we have in the cloud. In fact, if I open a folder, you can see the same files on my local machine as we have in the cloud. This sync works in both directions. Just to simulate that, I'm going to make a change to my local machine. I'm just going to right click, and on my local machine, I'll create a new folder. After creating the folder, I can move over to the web browser and do a simple refresh. And when I do, you'll see the new folder exists in the cloud. That sync works in both directions. So if I make a change in the cloud, for instance, if I delete that new folder, I can delete that from the cloud environment. And then when I'm finished, I can come back to my desktop. And if I do a refresh over here, we'll see that new folder disappear. One thing I want to stress, just because this is a synced folder, it doesn't create an entire copy of the cloud on your local machine. The way this works, when this drive letter is created, if you open that up, you'll be able to see your projects. You'll be able to see your directory structures that are in the cloud. You'll be able to see the files that are in the cloud. It will not pull a file down local to your machine unless you open it or reference it or utilize it in some way. That's when the files come down and they're synced. So that's the way that works. So with file exchange and the ability to have synced folders back and forth between the cloud, this is another thing that you can do with the Docs entitlement that comes with the AEC collection. Let's keep going. There is several forms of collaboration that are possible just using Docs. Earlier, when we talked about the modules, we talked about that model collaboration module. That's the one that allows you to put your Civil 3D project in the cloud, or your Revit project, or your Plant 3D. So those, that's nice. That's an additional item. But just with the Docs entitlement, we have some collaboration tools that we can use with InfraWorks, for instance. If you're someone that uses InfraWorks, historically, the InfraWorks model is stored behind your firewall. Using Docs, I can save that InfraWorks model to the cloud so that people outside my firewall, other stakeholders, can collaborate with me on that model. I can also use Docs as a conduit to share Civil 3D surfaces with Revit. If you've ever tried sharing a Civil 3D surface with Revit, historically, that's been kind of a painful thing. Sometimes you may move it over, try and do it as a solid maybe, but then it doesn't act like a Revit surface. You can't move objects to the elevation. You can't create sections. It doesn't maintain the triangulation. Using Docs, I can create a link between that Civil 3D surface and Revit, and that surface will maintain full fidelity, same triangulation that it has in Civil 3D. Let's take a look at this. First, we'll start with InfraWorks. On my screen, I've got a drawing that represents a proposed roadway design. Let's say that I would like to collaborate on this model with my colleague, Alan Gilbert, who's in Alabama. First thing I'm going to do is publish this model to the cloud. In the InfoWorks interface, there is a publish button. And when I click that, I can select my desired account. And then I can select my desired docs project and folder. After choosing my folder, I can select the resources from this model that I'd like to upload to the cloud. This is going to be things like proposals and the master item, the various components in my SQLite database. Once I publish the model to the cloud, I can continue to work on it on my local machine. In this case, I've just added a tree. When I'm finished, I can come up and you'll see that publish button is now called a sync button. If I click sync, this is where I can push the new components that are on my local machine. I can push those up and have them synced with the cloud version. So that's basically how the sync works. Now let's talk about how we can get Alan involved. If I go to Docs, all I have to do is give Alan rights to the folder where that InfoWorks model is stored. So if I access the permissions and I say I want Alan Gilbert to have permissions to that folder, I'm giving him view, upload, edit permissions. As soon as I do that, when Alan runs InfoWorks on his computer, he'll see my model show up on his desktop. If he clicks that model, it will pull the latest version of that model down to his machine, and now he can work on that model. As an example here, he's going to be laying out some additional landscaping. So just by doing this, we can have multiple folks, regardless of locations, collaborating on a single InfoWorks model. When Alan's finished, he'll come up and click the sync button, and that will push his changes back to the cloud. He's nice enough to put a description in there describing what he did. After Alan syncs his changes, we'll go back to my desktop. I just want to show you that on my desktop, when I'm running InfoWorks, you can see this icon in the corner. You can see the cloud shows us that the model is stored in the cloud. There's also an arrow there that shows me that the version in the cloud needs to be pulled down to my machine because the version in the cloud is newer than what I have right now. So when I launch InfoWorks, I can even go over and hover over that icon. It'll show me who edited the file and when. If I click to open the file, I can then click the sync button and I can pull Alan's changes down to my local machine. So we can see the cloud's got some unsaved changes on my machine. I can pull those down. So another nice aspect of being able to store your InfoWorks model in the cloud is you can make the models available to folks who don't have InfoWorks. For instance, I can open the InfoWorks model right here through the Docs environment. So if you have somebody that doesn't have InfoWorks that would like to review an InfoWorks model, it will open it up in their web browser using a lightweight version. Now they can have access to all the proposals. They have access to all of the objects. They can see the same property data that you have in the InfoWorks environment. In fact, if you look at the right side of the screen, we have access to all of the markup tools as well. We can create issues in this environment as well. Creating markups and issues is something that you can't do any other way on an InfoWorks model unless that model is stored in Docs. So this is another workflow that's possible if you're someone that uses InfoWorks, just using the AEC or using the Docs entitlement that came with your AEC collection. You can collaborate on your InfoWorks models in the cloud. Let's look at the Revit example. Maybe I would like to share a Civil 3D file with Revit. We'll assume that we're an architect working on a building, and then we'll say that a civil engineer is working on the surface, the proposed surface for the site plan. What we have to do first is we have to line up the environments. So if the architect simply identifies the footprint or some geometry representing the foundation plan for that building, they can export that as DWG from Revit. That can be inserted on the Civil 3D side of things such that it can be oriented appropriately within easements and setbacks and things like that. So here we can see that footprint. Now, the footprint is placed both horizontally and vertically in the appropriate location. You can see when I've tipped that up that it's elevated to the surface. Once that's been placed, we can then share the coordinates with Revit. We use a feature called Export Shared Reference Points. And the way this works, we just pick 2 points on the building, and then those coordinates are stored as an XML file. That XML file can then be imported into Revit to share those coordinates. So here on the Revit side of things, I'm going to choose to import the XML file. I will pick those same 2 points. I'll grab the XML file so Revit knows the coordinates that are associated with that. And now this Revit is now aware of the Civil 3D coordinate system. I can even set that coordinate system current here in the Revit environment. If I go down to locations and site, I can say I'd like to use the shared coordinate system. We can also share the orientation as well. If I flip the orientation from project north to true north, we'll see the orientation in Revit is the same as it is in Civil 3D. Once we have the coordinate systems aligned, then we can share the surface from Civil 3D. And in the Civil 3D environment, there's an option that says publish surfaces. I can publish my surface, one or more. If I click the ellipsis button, I can then use the desktop connector that we looked at a second ago. This is how I can publish my surface right to the cloud without having to use the web browser. I'll just pick the appropriate project and folder. And then once I've published that surface to the cloud, I can then go back to the Revit side of things, and I can import this surface just by doing a link topography. And when I choose link topography, I can select that same project and folder. I'll grab that Civil 3D surface, and I'll choose to align it using the shared reference coordinates. The nice thing about this surface is it has the exact same triangulation that it has on the Civil 3D side of things. And if that surface were to change in Civil 3D, all the user has to do is publish a new version, and then the people in Revit just have to update or refresh the link to see the changes in this environment. So this is another workflow that's made possible using the docs entitlement that's included with the AEC collection. Okay, so we have talked about a bunch of things today. We did a quick overview of Autodesk's cloud platform. We talked about the docs entitlement or docs being the foundation of the cloud platform. That's what everything is connected to. We looked at how we could use docs for digital design review, being able to open files, create markups, generate issues, assign work, track that work to completion. We looked at that digital history that's available for every project. We looked at how you can access your project information in the cloud, whether you can take measurements, whether you're looking at PDFs or models. We can create issues in the cloud. All of that information is trackable. We looked at how we could use docs for the purpose of having a single source for file exchange, no file size limit, no storage limits. Everything's located in one environment, subject to the audit trail, subject to the versioning. We have a record of every file that comes in and goes out. And then we looked at how we could use docs for collaboration, being able to host an InfraWorks model in the cloud, being able to create markups and issues associated with InfraWorks, or being able to share our Civil 3D data more easily with Revit. Before we jump into questions, let me say that after seeing this, if you are interested in getting started using docs on one of your projects, by all means, reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you get started. Likewise, you can also reach out to your Autodesk partner from whom you obtained your AEC collection. They'll be more than happy to help you get up and running using that docs entitlement. Okay, with that, I'm going to jump to the questions area, and we can check if there are any questions that remain unanswered.
I think we're pretty close at this point. So I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for coming. If there are additional questions, please, you can go ahead and reach out to us, or you can reach out to your Autodesk partner for more information. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your time. We hope you found the session was valuable. On behalf of Jerry Bartels, Angel Espinosa, Alan Gilbert, and myself, I want to say thank you guys for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again at a future webinar. Thanks.